My first business I started was really to fund a lifestyle ambition. How do I find the time and money and energy to pursue my passion? I can do it through business. And I guess the backdrop here is some of the most important success lessons learned come from failure or near failure. I had a business that I was growing 40% a year for 2 years. I had just bought out my partner. I had taken on some debt, right? And I managed to own more of the company by buying out the partner, and then the recession hit.
Hello, and welcome to the Success Is podcast, where we dive into the stories, strategies, and secrets of successful entrepreneurs, business leaders, and innovators. I'm your host, Phil Portman. Joining us today is Crag Dickens, a serial entrepreneur and the CEO of a prominent and well-respected investment bank. Crag has built a remarkable career by guiding his clients towards strategic paths for rapid growth, business optimization, and profitable exits. With a wealth of experience and a track record of success, Crag offers invaluable insights into what it takes to thrive in the competitive world of business. Welcome to the show, Crag.
Thanks, Phil. It's great to be here. It's an exciting day. We're live.
Let's get right into it. What does success mean to you, Crag?
I'll tell you what, I've, as we go throughout our career and our family lives, and I've got a few gray hairs, so my definition of success has changed over the years, and I hope it always does, right, as I kind of crest the next hill. But to me, I'm going to take a little bit of a different path to success. I'm going to focus on scoreboard, right? Not just for the athletes in the audience, but at the end of the day, we all get to define success by a scoreboard. And that scoreboard is dictated by either numbers or time. And so for me, regardless of whether it's family, financial, business, etc., I am rooted and guided by scoreboard because I always want to be going towards something, right? Not running away from something, but moving towards something that's compelling. So I can offer a few examples of what scoreboard looks like, but to me, it's about the numbers. And before people roll their eyes and say, "Oh, a numbers guy talking about numbers," go figure, right? We can kind of humanize that and hopefully help people in the audience think about their number, right? What is that number?
Yes, absolutely. So, and winners keep score, right? And keeping track of that. That's incredibly important to have goals that are manageable, right? Lead and lag measures type goals. So I'd love to get into that. Let's kick it off with what inspired you to become an entrepreneur and how did you start your journey?
After a corporate career, about 12 years, I think I had this mentor that said, you're really creative. You have a lot of ideas. You have a vision for the future and you're in a hurry. And I took that to mean that I'm somewhat unemployable, right? So if the rest of the organization isn't moving at a certain pace, right, and I want to move at a different pace, maybe that was square peg, round hole. So that particular mentor gave me some great advice. It sounds like you're an entrepreneur. I said, yeah, I've already started a couple businesses. And before the word side hustle was a thing, right, was doing some of that with my personal time. And, so it was kind of a DNA matter more than anything else. But once I realized it, I said, look, this is where I need to be. This is what I'm passionate about.
So getting into those things, you talked about having a scoreboard. Did you have a scoreboard back then, or did you have a plan and into what you were getting into, or were these kind of opportunities that just presented themselves and you took hold of them?
Yeah, great question. I think, again, as we age and develop, right, our scoreboard changes a little bit, but it starts with intentionality, right? My first business I started was really to fund a lifestyle ambition. I was an amateur triathlete. I was working for a company that I didn't have to start my workday till about 10 a.m. So it provided perfect opportunity to get in the pool at 5, get on the bike at 7, right? That sort of thing. So very time bound and measured. And I ended up doing a triathlon mail order company to basically fund my passion of doing triathlons. So, we were selling the latest and greatest, equipment for triathletes. So the intention and the scoreboard was built around how do I find the time and money and energy to pursue my passion I can do it through business. So by selling, literally by selling out of the trunk of the car, so to speak, at these events, my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife, was doing the commerce while I was out racing. And then after the race, I could consult with people and say, hey, I use this aerodynamic bar and this disc wheel and this wetsuit, you should try it, right? So a lot of times the scoreboard is based on lifestyle to start. Then as we grow and mature, it turns into something else. It's how many zeros in the bank, how much free time do I want with my kids, what does my work-life balance look like? So yeah, everything has always been kind of at least had a scoreboard measure to it.
So your scoreboard, does it change often, or do you set it and that's it? It's concrete?
Life happens, recessions happen, right? And I think as entrepreneurs, one of the gifts we've been given as entrepreneurs is to be nimble and creative and flexible. So certainly the scoreboard changes with the business dynamic as much as we want to be intentional and focused on certain things. Look, life happens and, some personal things happen too, right? That you might want to adjust your scoreboard and kind of make sure that you're in balance. I mentioned time with the kids, right? My scoreboard, my calendar, as part of my scoreboard, I block out certain times that say, this is family time, this is kid time. I measure success by the quality of that time and how present I am. So therefore, if I let my schedule and other things get in the way, then my scoreboard for family time is out of whack, as they say.
So the scoreboard isn't just financial success. You're scoreboarding your success in life, which could be personal time as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, what's important to you, right? And being intentional about defining that. And I mentioned that, kind of stage of life, right? If, I think I'm a better dad, I think I'm a better husband, I think I'm a better boss, better entrepreneur, better friend, if I'm in charge of my scoreboard versus the rest of the world being in charge of it, right? So, if if I decide that, Friday afternoons are mine and I'm just going to do things for me to recharge my batteries, to think creatively, to, plan the next RV vacation with the kids, that's my time. And I count that as a win on the scoreboard. Now, as I get older, right, there's an element of mentoring, right? Do I want to mentor some folks, and that's part of my scoreboard. Has nothing to do with financial. One could argue that the time I spend doing those things potentially takes away from, the amount of zeros in the bank account. But again, it's about, finding that balance and defining what success is.
Absolutely. So you talked about difficult times, recessions, things like that. And we do talk about success in here, but often the journey for success is there's times where things don't go very well. Can you describe the biggest challenge you faced in your career and how you overcame it?
Yeah, great question. The 2008, 2009, the Great Recession, right? And I guess the backdrop here is some of the most important success lessons learned come from failure or near failure. I had a business that I was growing 40% a year for 2 years. I had just bought out my partner. I had taken on some debt, right? And I managed to own more of the company by buying out the partner, and then the recession hit. My inventory was valued at X and it dropped by a third because of the underlying commodity prices. I found out that the bank that I was working with was a zombie bank, right? In other words, they had more liabilities than assets because they did a bunch of commercial lending, right? And it was either them or me, and they chose to be them. So they basically swept all the cash out of my account and called my line of credit in the middle of that dynamic. So I had to really pivot very quickly. And, I sold that company to 3 different buyers. I broke up the divisions and basically had to go out and really, take it on the chin, if you will. I probably left, I don't know, about $10 million on the table, but I lived to fight another day. I got people their money back, right? And I was forced to do that. But in that lesson, I learned a lot about the capital markets. And when there isn't capital available, right, sometimes you have to do things a little bit differently. So, certainly success for any entrepreneur is not just up and to the right always, right? There's always bumps in the road. There's always learning opportunities. And the degree to which you can, and there's a couple ways, the military calls this embracing the suck, right? When you get into a situation where you got to embrace it and you just have to figure it out and persevere. And in the end, that's better than going bankrupt and doing all those other things, right? So those lessons are hard fought, and definitely you got the plaques on the wall, but having the scars on the back are equally and sometimes more important to the success journey.
Yeah. So what would you have done differently in that situation? Or is there any advice that you could give to somebody starting off in their entrepreneurial journey to help maybe prevent them from going through what you went through?
Yeah, I think, most, I hate to kind of paint a broad brush here, but a lot of entrepreneurs are, kind of type A, they're driven, they're growth oriented, and they're optimists. And I think if you think about value, whether it's a company that you own or run, or whether it's, anything that you have, there's two equations to value. It's not just growth rate, right? It's not just, the margins that you make, et cetera, but it's also the risk side of the equation. What is the risk to this golden goose? What is the risk to these streams of cash flows? What is the risk to your family? And I find that a lot of entrepreneurs, and myself included, have chased the optimistic path, the growth path, and everything's going to be fine. And you really need to think about, in order to become more valuable, you simultaneously have to de-risk. And, it's like if you buy your house and it's your dream house, right? But you don't put insurance on it, the risk of a fire is out there. The risk of loss is out there, right? So, you really have to think of both sides of those equations. So I would probably, if I talk to my younger self, I would say, you're gaining a lot, you're growing a lot, but you're also taking on a lot of risk because you have, debt on the company to help fuel the growth, right? So just making sure that balance is there. I don't think anybody could have predicted that Great Recession. Everybody's a genius in hindsight, but ultimately, as I look back on it, I'm like, okay, you got to balance that risk reward continuum always, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And ultimately you survived and probably learned quite a bit from it. So that's important.
Indeed.
So an avid reader, which I've heard you are as well. Are there any books that have had a significant influence on your approach to business and leadership?
Oh boy. Yeah, there's a bunch. And again, forgive the investment banker in me, but a fellow investment banker by the name of Rob Slee wrote a book, Time Really Is Money. And when you think about it, what kind of problems as an entrepreneur are you solving? And I think this goes to my scoreboard a little bit, right? There are certain tasks that we have to do as entrepreneurs that are what I'll call $20 an hour tasks, right? And if you think about Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, right, they're probably working on, $5 million an hour problems or tasks as entrepreneurs, solving those things. So as I think about my personal scoreboard in that book, really talked about, are you doing $20 an hour work? Are you doing $1,000 an hour work? Are you doing $5,000 an hour work? And solving $5,000 an hour problems. If you take whatever you want to make, right, and assume, and I know none of us entrepreneurs work a 9 to 5, but there are 2,080 hours in a 40-hour work week over the course of a year, and you take what you want to make divided by 2080, that's pretty much your hourly rate. And if you're working on something for an hour and it's $20 an hour, that is directly against your scoreboard and it's not benefiting you. So how can you scale your organization? How can you right size that? How can you have your whole organization track their time for 2 weeks and figure out if there's things that they should or shouldn't be working on based on that hourly rate? So, again, it goes down to the number, but we all get caught in that working for less than what our brain can handle. If it's a $5,000 an hour problem, then that's the one we need to solve.
Absolutely. Yeah. I learned that early in my entrepreneurship career. I found myself keeping busy for the sake of being busy and realizing that why am I doing this? This is literally limiting the growth of my company by me doing this and not handing this thing off. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of that work ethic is what got me to where I was. And then it became hard to kind of let some of that stuff go as the business, grew to a point where I couldn't directly manage some of those things. So I'd love to hear any daily rituals or habits that you believe have contributed to your success. Do you have anything that you do on a daily through a habit that has helped you reach the level of success that you have today?
Yeah, I think, and again, it's probably a consistent theme. I have the goals down in every area of my life, whether it be personal, spiritual, right, financial, family, and I've got some buddies that hold me accountable to those goals. And it's an age-old, acronym, but SMART goals, right? Are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they attainable? Are they realistic? And are they time bound? Unless you're keeping score, you tend to tread water a lot, right? So I spend time, and at the end of the day, I'll look at that and say, where am I tracking? Certainly I sit down more on a weekly and monthly basis. I also, at least once a year, I kind of take myself on a retreat and look at those goals, and I go somewhere fun and out of the way and no distractions. And we've got a little place on Hood Canal that's just like, leave me alone. And really spending time on those and intentional time. So I think that would be the thing that keeps me on course correct, for sure.
Absolutely. I love the accountability partner. How do you find a good accountability partner? Are there any things that you look for specifically with finding a good accountability partner?
Like anything in the human realm here, right? It's just getting to know people, different people. And if you click, and if people are, sometimes equally as geekish as you are about these kind of topics, right? And just finding that alignment, and it just comes from relationship first, and then it's kind of that weird, awkward conversation of, hey, and I can't remember where I heard this. I really want to attribute the credit, but I can't recall. But it might have been. I think it was Simon Sinek. He was talking about a friend needing his attention, and the friend kind of sent over this text that said, hey, would love to chat, blah, blah, blah. But really that friend was in need, right? And the relationship was such that the friend really wanted to rely on him, in this case, to have a conversation, but never really said that. So they came up with this little deal that said, do you have 8 minutes? Because that's really kind of I need to talk to somebody about accountability and goals and where I'm at, and so I instituted that with one of my partners, my accountability partners, and it was pretty much 911. Instead of do you have 8 minutes, because that was a little long, we're like 911. It means I really need to talk. And a lot of times with those relationships, right, it could just be a check-in, or it could be an accountability, or hey, am I crazy for thinking this way? Whatever it is, right? Entrepreneurs and CEOs, it's the loneliest job on the planet because we're supposed to have all the answers, right? So making sure that you've got relationships and you have them in such a way that you can be open and vulnerable and transparent, that's key to that accountability partner kind of relationship, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great advice. And it is a very lonely position. And I think not just for the advice and recommendations, but the mental health of just having somebody that you can talk to is incredibly important for that role.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talking about investment banking, how do you foresee the future of investment banking evolving? And is there anything that you're doing, or what are you doing to prepare for it?
Yeah, I think like most industries, our principal business is helping people sell their companies, which is a process, not an event, right? And it's technology aided, right? There's a lot of financial moving parts and pieces. There's technology that comes into play in terms of outbound marketing and driving interest. We also help people buy their competitors, and we help them raise money for growth, either debt capital or equity capital. And more we're seeing, just like Amazon is a platform and others, we're seeing more and more activity happen at the platform level. and people trying to scale their outreach. So I think any entrepreneur out there that isn't thinking about how can I enhance my efficiency, how can I increase my marketing and being seen in a very crowded world, technology is kind of the answer. At the end of the day, there's an art and science, but more of the science is being dominated by technology and financial acumen, but yet the art is still there. It still takes a human to buy a company from another human. So I don't worry about disintermediation or people taking our jobs or AI taking our jobs, right? In general, the entrepreneur will always find a way to harness whatever tool, whether it be technology or other, to make a buck, as they say. So it's a dynamic time, and it's a time where, if you're not open to some of those new technologies, you will be left behind for sure.
Absolutely. No, that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. That's why I love it so much, is it's constantly changing, adapting, and embracing that change is really exciting.
Well, you're living it right now, right? We're live. This is a live. You've upped the game already. You have a great
Just keep pushing it.
And yeah, you're up in the game. So to stay relevant in today's market, you gotta stretch yourself a little bit.
Keep
right?
pushing it. It keeps getting exciting too, and it's good for the brain because you're unlocking new channels, and your brain keeps developing as you put more pressure on it and as you're doing different things. So
yeah, great point.
Settling for the status quo never really works out. So you talked about growth rate and profitability. Specifically with your clients. How do you define and measure success with them?
I think, at the end of the day, we're in a client-centric business, and we start with their objectives first. How do they define success? And a lot of people get caught up in, all right, success is I sell my company for $100 million. Well, that's great. And that's the top line number. But sometimes we force people to think a little differently and more holistically about success. There's an age-old adage in our business. It's not how much you sell for, it's how much you keep in the end, right? The tax man is involved, right? There's different structures involved. So, we help them redefine success, but it has to start with them. Some of our sellers say, I really want to make sure that, I get the best outcome for my employees and my team. That could be a measure. Some people prioritize cash more than structure. I mean, there's so many different levers to pull, but at the end of the day, they've got to be comfortable and knowledgeable, especially first-time sellers, entrepreneurs that, believe they're going to sell to Microsoft, right? I mean, the last deal Microsoft did was for billions, not, a few million. So we have to kind of sometimes guide and redirect expectations, but ultimately, they get to call the ball and how they define success. We just like to craft it with them as to what's realistic and reasonable, in today's market.
Got it. Anything exciting that you're working on right now?
Yeah, lots of exciting stuff. We also do some purchasing of companies for our own book and for my family office. And so we have several of those deals in process. And those are fun because, and I think it also informs my investment banking because I get to wear not only the seller hat when I'm selling companies, but also the buyer hat. So I can really speak to, here's how buyers think, right? So let's position this asset a little differently, or let's make sure that, we've got a buyer on the other end versus just thinking egocentrically about what I want out of the deal. So that's stretching my brain a little bit these days, which is kind of fun and exciting.
Absolutely. Well, Craig, I want to thank you for your time today, and thank you for being involved with the first live stream that we've done here. For our audience listening, how do they keep in touch with you? Follow what you got going on? How do they keep in touch with you out there?
Yeah, that's great. So LinkedIn is easy, Craig Dickens, and it's our website is meritinvestmentbank.com. And occasionally you can find me on Twitter, M&A exit. But LinkedIn and also email craig.dickens, Dickens, @meritinvestmentbank.com. Probably the best way to get me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Craig. And thank you to our audience for listening today on this episode of the Successes podcast. Thank you for everyone that was catching in on the live stream as well. Until next time, keep striving for success. And remember, success is a journey, not a destination. I'm Phil Portman. This has been the Successes podcast. Thank you.